Before Babylon rose, there was only marsh and mud, where two great rivers met in silence. The Tigris and Euphrates carried silt from distant mountains, building land grain by grain. Fishermen cast nets into shallow waters beneath a sky that stretched forever into the heat. Reeds swayed in the hot wind, whispering secrets that no one would ever remember or write down. The silence here was ancient, unbroken, patient as stone waiting for something to be born. This place was called Bab Elim, the Gate of the Gods, and it would become legendary. From this humble wetland soaked in river water, one of the greatest cities would emerge. Stay with us. This is 4,000 years of Babylon in 15 minutes. One epic journey. Around 1800 BC, a warrior king named Hammurabi walked these muddy streets. Babylon was small then, barely a regional power surrounded by enemies who wanted it dead. Larsa, to the south, grew rich on trade. Eshnunna commanded the northern mountain passes. Mari controlled the Euphrates trade routes like a stranglehold, taxing every passing merchant. Every neighbor was a threat. Every alliance was temporary. Trust was a currency no one spent, but Hammurabi refused to be conquered. He was brilliant, patient, and ruthless when needed. One by one, he swallowed his enemies through diplomacy, marriage, betrayal, and brutal war. He conquered Larsa after years of careful planning. He burned Eshnunna until stone wept. He destroyed Mari so completely its ruins would sleep beneath sand for 4,000 years. Within 3 decades, Babylon ruled all of Mesopotamia, from the Gulf to Anatolian mountains. His empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the highlands where snow fell in deep winter. The wealth of a dozen kingdoms flowed into Babylon's treasury like water into a deep well. Hammurabi built temples of baked brick that gleamed golden in the merciless desert sunlight. He paved the streets with stone so wagons could roll without sinking deep into the mud. He dug canals to bring water from the rivers to fields that fed 100,000 mouths. Then he did something extraordinary that would outlive his empire by thousands of years. He carved 282 laws into a massive pillar of polished black stone. The Code of Hammurabi governed everything from trade to marriage to theft and violent murder. Justice was no longer the whim of kings. It was written, permanent, carved for all to see. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. The law applied to everyone, even powerful kings. The strong could not oppress the weak without consequence. The rich could not cheat the poor. For the first time in human history, justice was something you could read and hold to. The code was copied by scribes for centuries, studied in schools, memorized by young judges. The city grew fat on tribute and trade, swelling like a river in the season of floods. Caravans arrived from the Indus Valley carrying lapis lazuli, the color of midnight skies. Merchants from Anatolia brought tin and silver locked in chests guarded by armed soldiers. Egyptian traders offered gold, ivory, and spices that made even the poorest man dream. The streets hummed with a dozen languages: Akkadian, Sumerian, Amorite, and distant Elamite. Scribes bent over clay tablets in palm shade, recording contracts in wedge-shaped writing. The Ishtar gate rose at the northern entrance like a vision sent straight from heaven. Its glazed bricks shone blue as dawn sky. Lions prowled the walls in yellow and white tile. Dragons and bulls marched in endless procession toward Marduk's temple at the city's heart. Babylon was alive with roasting lamb, cardamom, cinnamon, and incense smoke curling skyward. It was the beating heart of the world, the center of everything that truly mattered. Merchants from 50 kingdoms walked streets paved with the wealth of conquered nations. But empires built on conquest rarely last longer than the men who forged them in blood. After Hammurabi died, His sons squabbled over power like starving dogs over a single bone. Taxes rose. Rebellions flared in distant provinces. Babylon weakened, fractured, slowly bled. The Hittites came down from Anatolian highlands like wolves descending on a winter village. In 1595 BC, they sacked Babylon and smashed its temples into broken rubble. They took the golden statue of Marduk and carried Babylon's patron god away in iron chains. For Babylonians, this was worse than any defeat. Without Marduk, heaven had abandoned them. The city fell into darkness. The temples emptied. Prayers went unanswered by silent gods. For centuries, Babylon was a shadow, a name whispered in fear and pity by desert travelers. The Kassites ruled for 400 years, but they were foreigners in a city they never loved. Assyrian warlords trampled Babylon underfoot whenever it dared rise or challenge their rule. Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, hated Babylon so much he destroyed it utterly in 689 BC. He flooded the streets. He tore down walls, stone by stone. He plowed ruins into the earth. The great ziggurats crumbled into shapeless mounds. Dust filled avenues where kings once walked. The city of gods became a city of ghosts, haunted by memories of vanished glory and dead kings. For decades, Babylon was nothing but broken bricks and the wind howling through empty gates. Then came Nebuchadnezzar II, and Babylon roared back to life like a waking lion. He rebuilt the city brick by brick, turning rubble into glory beyond Hammurabi's wildest visions. He widened the processional way until 50 armored men could march side by side without touching. He raised the Etemenanki ziggurat so tall it seemed to pierce heaven and threaten the gods. 7 terraces rose 300 feet into desert sky, each painted a different sacred color. The Greeks would later call it the Tower of Babel, struck down by God in jealous fury. Nebuchadnezzar planted the Hanging Gardens for his wife Amytis, who missed her mountain homeland. Terraces of vines and flowering trees cascaded down massive arches supported by stone vaults. Water pumped from the Euphrates fed a jungle in the middle of the burning, waterless desert. Parrots screamed in branches. Jasmine scent drifted through palace windows day and night. It was one of the 7 wonders, though some historians doubt it ever truly existed at all. No archaeological trace remains. Perhaps it was myth, beautiful fiction, a traveler's dream. Nebuchadnezzar was not just a builder. He was a conqueror who painted maps red with blood. He crushed revolts in Syria and Phoenicia with overwhelming and merciless military force. He besieged the island city of Tyre for 13 brutal years until it finally surrendered. In 586 BC, he conquered Jerusalem and dragged its people into bitter exile. 10,000 Jews marched to Babylon in chains, forced to build the very walls imprisoning them. Babylon swelled with captives, slaves, artisans, and spoils from a dozen conquered kingdoms. At its peak, the city held 200,000 souls, more than any city on earth then. The walls were so thick that chariot races thundered across the top on bricks 10 meters wide. Defensive towers rose every 60 feet along 15 miles of fortifications ringing the city. No army could break through. No siege engine could crack walls that laughed at their enemies. Babylon believed itself eternal, untouchable, blessed by Marduk and protected by divine walls. The city had survived everything. It would survive forever. The gods themselves promised it. But the gods have short memories, and all empires eventually fall harder than they rose. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great of Persia marched on Babylon with a massive army. The city prepared for a siege lasting years, stockpiling grain and sealing iron-barred gates. But Cyrus was clever. He diverted the Euphrates upstream, turning the mighty river to a trickle. His soldiers waded through shallow water under darkness and entered through unguarded water gates. Babylon fell in a single night without battle or blood while the city feasted and celebrated. The Persians walked into the throne room and sat on Marduk's seat as if they'd always belonged. The age of Babylonian kings was over. The gate of the gods had opened to foreign rulers. No one died. No one fought. The greatest city on earth simply changed hands over a festival night. Under Persian rule, Babylon became a jewel in the crown of the world's largest empire. Cyrus was merciful. He freed Jewish exiles and sent them home to rebuild their sacred temple. He restored Babylonian temples, respected local gods, and let the city trade and thrive. For a time, Babylon prospered as a cosmopolitan hub where many cultures mixed and mingled. Alexander the Great arrived in 331 BC after conquering half the known world. He declared Babylon his capital, planning to rebuild it greater than Nebuchadnezzar ever dreamed. He would dredge the canals, expand the harbors, turn Babylon into the center of everything. But Alexander died in Babylon at 32, killed by wine or fever or the jealous gods. His body lay in the palace, while his generals tore his empire apart like vultures on meat. Babylon was left behind, a prize no one wanted desperately enough to fight for or defend. The conqueror who would rebuild the world died before he could even begin his greatest work. The Seleucids built a new capital nearby, Seleucia on the Tigris, closer to trade routes. Trade shifted north. The great canals silted up and turned to disease-breeding swampland. The Euphrates changed course, abandoning the city like a lover grown tired of empty promises. Magnificent temples were abandoned to snakes, scorpions, and the slow erosion of wind and rain. By the time of Christ, Babylon was already a ruin, melting back into earth like wet sand. Travelers spoke of broken walls buried in drifting sand that moved like slow, patient water. The Ishtar Gate stood open to desert wind, its blue tiles cracking under relentless sun. The processional way disappeared beneath dust and the scattered bones of forgotten kings. The city that once held 200,000 was home to jackals, wild dogs, and deep silence. Even the memory of Babylon became a legend, a warning, a name that meant pride before the fall. For 2,000 years, Babylon was a ghost, a warning in ancient texts and biblical prophecy. Bedouins camped in ruins, using Nebuchadnezzar's bricks for shepherd huts and cooking fires. Archaeologists in the 1800s began digging, brushing away centuries of deliberate forgetting. They found the Ishtar Gate buried under 40 feet of dust, debris, and collapsed civilizations. They uncovered ziggurat foundations and mapped the palace outline with its hundreds of rooms. They read clay tablets, contracts, prayers, love letters, astronomical observations, and pieced together daily life. Every tablet told a story. A merchant complaining about late delivery, a father blessing his son. Saddam Hussein tried rebuilding Babylon in the 1980s, stamping new bricks with his name. He wanted glory and legitimacy, a desperate connection to ancient power that would make him immortal. He dreamed of being the new Nebuchadnezzar, but history had other plans for modern dictators. American tanks rolled through in 2003, crushing ancient walls under steel treads. Babylon became a military base, helicopter pad, firing range. History trampled under soldier boots. The city that survived the Persians, survived Alexander, could not survive the modern world. Today, Babylon is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected, preserved, studied, mostly empty. Tourists walk the reconstructed Ishtar Gate, cameras clicking, posing for photos they'll forget. They stand where Hammurabi stood and promulgated laws to crowds that have been dust for millennia. They see the ziggurat outline against endless desert sky and imagine it whole, gleaming, crowned. But imagination is all that remains now. The hanging gardens are gone, if they ever existed. The Tower of Babel is dust and fragments scattered across centuries of myth and memory. The city of Marduk is written in broken stone, wind-scoured brick, and unread history books. Babylon died 1,000 deaths and never truly rose again, not like it was in ancient glory. But its legacy lived on in law, mathematics, astronomy, and the very idea of civilization. Every time you divide an hour into 60 minutes, you use Babylonian mathematics from priests. Every time justice is codified in law rather than left to king's mercy, Hammurabi nods approval. Every time a great city falls and rises from ashes, Babylon's story echoes through endless time. 4,000 years from mud to glory, to ruin to memory, and the gate of the gods still calls. Like and subscribe. The next ancient wonder waits in history's shadows, pulling us back to learn.